So, welcome everybody to the next edition of What's Your Story from the Gather Project. Today, we're excited to have the casting director team of Billy Hopkins and Ashley Ingram. Uh, uh, Thrilled to have you both, to join us. We've had the pleasure of working with these guys in the past and know that we're going to hear some great stories today. And we have Davi and Kira from our team in New York, who are going to be doing the interviewing, which is appropriate for this great New York, New York-based team. For those of you who are new, please check out gatherproject.net, which is what we're doing this as a part of, and can sign up for our mailing list and be aware of the other things that we're doing. But again, Billy and Ashley, thank you guys so much for doing this. This is a part of the business that so many students are interested in, and yet there's also so much mystery around the whole process and how you get, so many of the amazing teams and ensembles that you guys have gotten on projects in the past. I for one, I know Francesca and I are excited to hear the stories.
Well, hopefully we'll come up with some good ones.
Yeah.
So anyway, without further ado, I think we'll turn it over to Davi and Kira and turn off, and we'll come back and see you guys.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.
Cool, great. Hello, everyone. This is What's Your Story, an insight into the film industry from professionals. Today, we are spotlighting Billy Hopkins and Ashley Ingram, two New York City-based casting directors known for their collaboration on Empire and Lee Daniels as The Butler. In addition, we acknowledge their separate careers as casting directors on other projects as well. Guiding our conversation today is me, Daviana. I'm a current senior at NYU, majoring in film and television production. And moderating our conversation, we have Kira Sullivan, who just graduated NYU and also majored in film and television production. And we are both members of the Gather Project New York City chapter. So welcome, everyone. Hi, Billy. Hi, Ashley. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
You?
Excited to be here. So.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Me too. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about your creative paths and things like that. So the first question I'm going to ask is, and you guys can take turns answering each question. How did you get into casting, for a young filmmaker or aspiring filmmakers to get into it? What steps should they take?
Well, I started as a casting intern at an off-Broadway theater, which hopefully will survive the pandemic, and so far has. And then was hired as their casting director. And then at one point, the other young person who worked there, who was the assistant to the artistic director, we said, let's cast a movie. And so lo and behold, we got a movie called Desperately Seeking Susan. I think they hired us because we were the cheapest, available. And knock on wood, I've been doing it ever since. I mean, and part of the reason I was hired along with Risa was the producers and the director liked the casting jobs we had done in the theater. So, and I'll let Ashley answer about how to get started in terms of wanting to get into casting.
When I first got into casting, I was in college and I interned. I cold called offices to find out if they needed interns because I didn't know how else to contact these people. So that was many years ago. And I just picked up the phone. I called people. I wanted an internship. One summer I was home from college. Some of the offices were very nice and others were not so nice. And then I was lucky to have a couple interviews and I was offered a few different internships, and I actually chose two. I chose an intern with Billy and his casting partners at the time. And then I also chose another internship with a commercial print casting office. And so I interned for both and split my time 5 days a week between the two offices. And then when I graduated, I was fortunate enough that the print office offered me a job. And so I didn't have a job. I was studying to actually be an actor. So I thought, well, I really like casting. I'll take this job. I worked there for a little while, and then I decided I didn't really want to work in commercial print casting as a long-term career, and I wanted to go back into film and television casting. And so I actually went back to interning with Billy, and in, I don't know, Billy, like 6 months maybe, I was your assistant, and
Yeah.
then I never left. He got stuck with me forever.
My partners at the time kept stealing all my interns and my assistants. So when Ashley became available, I said, if I hire Ashley, you cannot take her, which they didn't. So,
Nope.
And then Ashley worked as my assistant, my associate, and now we're partners in crime. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's in terms of young people who want to get into casting, you really have to sort of start out as an intern. And oftentimes it's an unpaid internship. So you need to have another job at the same time, but you don't necessarily do it full time. But in order to be good at casting, you have to do casting and learn. Every office has its own idiosyncrasies. And, that's my advice. If you're really interested in it, people are always looking for interns. Although it's harder now with the situation we're in where everything's remote, but it will eventually go back to being in person again. So.
Yeah. And, so much of casting and learning is almost like a mentorship, truly. And there are websites and things that are out there that are actually helpful nowadays that weren't, I don't know if they were really around when I was first looking to intern, but the Casting Society of America, they can be a good resource. And they also have these kind of like introductory classes to take about casting. I think these like training courses that just teach you basically the software that we use and about casting if you don't really know anything about it. And then I actually think our union's putting something together too.
Yes, they are. So.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's great. And I think it's so inspiring, especially for, a young filmmaker like myself, that you were able to find someone like Billy and have that mentorship. Could you talk a little bit about, finding a good mentor in the film industry, especially now with everything being remote? For me, sometimes it feels a little daunting.
I can certainly understand that feeling. I mean, having everything be on Zoom or be remote, it definitely feels a little disconnected at times. I will be totally honest and say I'm very, very, very fortunate to have Billy as my mentor, and that I feel like our strengths complement each other very well. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's so much of casting is actually based on your instinct about people and how you take in a person's essence. And so just like you would look at an actor that way, when you're working with someone, you kind of know whether or not that person's a good fit for, for what you want to work with to build your career. So I've been very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to have Billy as my mentor.
Yeah, and Davi, don't be afraid, because you're a senior this year, right?
Yes.
And I know, and I know, Kira, you just graduated. It's like Ashley said, she sent cold letters around. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to be aggressive, but politely so. And because if you're not a little bit aggressive, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to go out there on a limb, no matter what part of the film industry or television industry you're interested in. And you have to be prepared to work for free for a while. That's just the way it is when you're in an internship. I mean, I was lucky. I did my internships when I was actually in college and managed to get college credit, which I think you can also still do that, can't you, Ashley?
It depends on the college.
College, yeah. So,
yeah. You're right, Billy. I mean, when I segued back into my second time working with Billy, I actually took an internship again to work alongside Billy, because I knew that was from my previous internship where it was where I wanted to be. So I think what Billy's saying is being politely aggressive makes sense. And don't be afraid. All you can do is just ask. And if someone says no, they say no, and then move on to the next person who you're interested in. That, you know, you may have respect for their career, or you may want to learn from them. Don't be afraid to approach them. And
Because if they can't use you at that time, they know someone else who can.
Exactly.
And it's important to show initiative too, you know. Just if you're an intern, just don't, like when there's downtime, just don't sit around doing nothing and wait. Ask a question, ask, how can I help? How do I do this? Whatever. And you know, you'll get somewhere. So.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much. So kind of tying into that a little bit, could you talk a little bit about what skills every casting director should have in their back pocket? Like what to look for, when to take a chance, sort of a thing.
Well, actually, I'll let you speak first. So.
Casting, I would say casting has like two parts to it, right? So there's a creative aspect, and then there's also a business aspect that goes along with casting. So a lot of people who work in casting are able to wear multiple hats. So you have the creative, where you are, you know, you're involved with auditioning the actors, you're involved with reading the scripts and discussing ideas and who could be right, and basically putting together this big puzzle. And then on the business end, you're also involved in making those actors deals and making sure that you have certain aspects organized and you know, negotiated.
And also, like Ashley's very up on, and our associate is on all the current technology, because casting, I mean, when I started in casting, you know, you didn't use a computer, you hand wrote lists and hand wrote schedules and everything. And now it's completely different. And I'm not, because of when I started, I don't know how to use a computer or do a lot of the technical stuff that Ashley and our associate knows how to do. But if you want to get into casting, it's important to really be up on your computer skills, I'd say.
Exactly. And you know, the software that or the things and platforms that we use in casting, if you're not working in casting, kind of tying back to what Billy was saying before, you really would have no reason to use these platforms. So like for our office, we acknowledge that when we're bringing someone new in as an intern, we need to show them how to do this, and that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. You know, there's a learning curve toward everything, but those are very broad things that casting directors have to have in their pocket, but that's probably the best thing that I would say.
And like related to that as well, I know both of you have worked on different films that have either been books first, which is very interesting, Mudbound and Precious. I just want to know how much creative liberty is the casting director given in terms of what the screenwriter envisioned versus what the director wants versus what the author wrote in the book. You know, it's complicated, especially for the author in particular.
I'll say that your allegiance is usually to the director, because that's whose vision the screenplay, and if it was a book, whether it be nonfiction or a novel, first has been entrusted, that director has been entrusted to bring those words to life in terms of like human flesh. So, you know, and so I say that we really, you know, you always have questions about, I mean, a lot of times the director and the screenwriter are the same person, which makes it twofold, but you try to serve the vision of whatever the director's vision of that project happens to be. Ashley, do you have anything to add?
Just, you know, in terms of for us, when we think of some, you know, a list of people who might be right for a role, it's always very wide ranging, no matter what.
Yeah.
So, you know, unless, of course, we want to stay true to the project. If there's a specific time period or something that's very specific, then that will inform, you know, the people that we're maybe suggesting or putting forward. But, you know, anytime we have the ability on any projects that we work on to present actors and ideas of people that may not necessarily be what's on the page, we take the opportunity to do that.
I've always done that. The first film I cast, Desperately Seeking Susan, John Turturro, who had just graduated from, I believe it was the Yale School of Drama, or from college, whatever. I cast in a supporting role in that film for someone that was, I mean, he was young, he was in his 20s, skinny with dark hair, was written for an overage bald man. So, right from the beginning, you just go with your instinct. And, the director may say no, or the producers may say no, but you know what? That shouldn't stop you from having creative ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And like going back on the, Billy, like you casting Madonna in Desperately Seeking Susan, like that's remarkable. Can you talk about how you can keep like a cultural pulse while casting? Can you talk about finding talent? Like when do you see an opportunity to find like a less famous actor and when you should, try to attach like a big name to a project?
Well, back then it was a little bit different. You didn't have to have super huge names all the time. Now, more so due to financing reasons, you usually have to have at least one big name. But like with Madonna, I mean, I knew who she was because my sister listened to her first album all the time. And so, we had a huge search for the lead in that film, and we brought Madonna in and screen tested. Back then, screen tested it with a film screen test, which they don't even do really anymore. So, and she really was so close to the character that she just became the character. And and then that's not to say that there weren't good actresses who were very close to getting the part, but we went out on a limb and hired the person who really just sort of was her. And then that role in Desperately Seeking Susan became, Madonna became Susan and vice versa. So, and then it was tricky, her career, she turned on a world tour to do the film. And then when the film was coming out, she was like, I mean, huge, just huge. But the tricky thing was her fan base. Were they really the audience for the film or not? But it worked. Everything worked out well, knock on wood. So
to finish out your question of keeping a pulse on people, it becomes, when you work in casting for a while, it becomes just an instinctual and inherent part of the job. Mm-hmm. So we all love actors and we're aware of many different actors. So if I see something that I thought someone gave an incredible performance in, or I loved it, I will talk to Billy about it. Billy talks to me, other people who work with us. We all talk about people that we are inspired by, or that we were, that we love their performances, or someone that's new that is being introduced to us. So there's all these different ways. And then, it's a matter of also just staying up a little bit on certain aspects of pop culture.
I mean, our assistant, who's the youngest in the office, is very good at keeping us informed.
Yes. We draw the line. We do not have TikTok accounts or anything like that, but our assistant does. So
he does, and it's always filling us in.
Exactly.
That's so interesting, because even with like the rise of Anya Taylor-Joy and how like a couple of years ago she was in a couple indie shorts, and now she's just like on the top of her game. It's just really interesting to see how a casting director was able to see that in her, and now she has like virtually every role. So keeping that cultural pulse is very like of much interest to like me and other film students as well.
That's part of that's definitely part of our job. There are many times that we will talk to directors and producers and say to someone, this person is a huge up and coming person. I know they do not have many credits right now, but they will only need that one project, and then they are huge. And so we, depending on, the projects, we encourage people to consider those actors that are up and coming, because we know them and it's our job to introduce them to everyone.
And, you hope that given the financial parameters these days of all films, whether it's a big budget movie or an independent film, that there's room to take a risk on somebody new, like they did with Anya Taylor-Joy. So, because I always, you try to have the talent rise to the top, but sometimes it takes a little bit of luck. So.
Yeah, exactly. Can you guys talk a little bit about casting characters based on real people? Like what do you guys look for? Especially, you know, like for you, Ashley, I know you worked on When They See Us, because the Central Park Five is still alive. Do you look to interact with the people if they're still alive? Like how do you go about that process of casting real people?
Billy and I worked on When They See Us together with
Oh,
Aisha
okay.
Cole.
Mhm.
So the three of us worked on that, and it was a multifolded process of, you know, I think for the kids, of finding the kids that kind of could capture the essence of what we were looking for to bring the young version of these real men to life. And also, you know, be believable in this time period. And, you know, it became something where it's never necessarily so much a physical match. It's more of an essence of a person. Do they have the spirit
Yeah.
that the real person has? Because, you know, inherently, like Billy says this with creating families, when you cast for a family too, just because like you're casting a mother, father, and a you know, like siblings, even if they don't all look alike, if they have the correct essence of this family, they will all come together as a family on screen. Same thing kind of with real people. It's really about their essence.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, years ago, I cast a wonderful Oliver Stone film, it's one of his best, called Nixon. And we cast Anthony Hopkins as Richard Nixon. I don't know, you're all too young probably to even know who Richard Nixon is, but he was the other impeached president. One of them anyway. And you know, Anthony Hopkins didn't necessarily look like Richard Nixon, but he had the essence and the spirit, which is, like Ashley said, is really what you're looking for.
It's the same thing like when you know, I was still so new in my career, and when I was working with Billy on The Butler and making all of those lists for all of those presidents and the first ladies.
Yeah.
It was really a lot about essence. And I remember you know, when Jane Fonda was cast, when that I remember, you remember, Billy, we were in rehearsal for that off-Broadway play, and
Yeah.
Lee
Mhm.
called you, like, who should we put as Nancy? And Billy said, oh, Jane Fonda, immediately. Like, and then she did it, and it all worked out. It was great.
And she
You
was
know,
wonderful.
yeah, she
So
was wonderful. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's all so interesting. Even like I'm thinking of a lot of the films that I've watched, like even just like Selma and things like that, and even like the two of you like working on like Billie Holiday versus the United States, like capturing that essence, I think is really important. And I think sometimes like a lot of casting directors will cast people that just look like that person and not necessarily capture that essence. And the whole
no,
family,
it's more about the essence and the spirit. It really
Yeah.
is. So
Yeah.
like Andra Day has in the Billie Holiday film. So
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm. So, let me see. Oh, how do projects come to you, and how do you decide whether or not to take something on?
There's a couple different ways projects come to us. Excuse me. Either we have a relationship with the director, potentially the writer or the producers, and they will reach out to us about their next project, and then there's that. Sometimes just based on the projects we've worked on previously, from like word of mouth, people will find us that way. Other times, if people are you know, are interested in something that we've recently done, and they respond to the creative eye that Billy and I bring, will be approached. So it's all different ways, really. It's all different ways. You know, we have a general inbox that people email us, and that's another way that people approach us with their projects. You know, a lot of casting directors have agents that work with them. That's another way that we can be approached, is through that route. And then it really comes down to the creative. We read the script and we look at the lookbook that may come along with it. And it's a matter of, do we resonate and respond to this project? Something I'm very fortunate about working with Billy is that you you know, we don't take on projects that we don't love, because we have to advocate for these scripts and these projects and for people to be excited by them. So we're very specific about what we take on. And if we don't respond to the script, then we're just not the right fit, and that's okay. And we may recommend someone else who would be. Or if we really love the script and we want to work on it, then we do.
Yeah, I agree with everything Ashley said. And, we're always working on more than one thing at a time, because a lot of things particularly independent films have a long gestation period. And while you're trying to get a star attached or a name attached to help with the financing. And then we do television things, which work very quickly, move very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see we have some questions in the chat. So I'm going to take some from the audience. Let's see. Ooh, okay. What up-and-comers are you most excited about right now?
Oh gosh.
Actresses.
I don't know. It's hard, because sometimes I wonder if, like, what people. Sometimes actors that I love and I feel like they're not an up-and-comer are an up-and-comer to certain people. I'm not quite sure. Like, we just recently cast this wonderful actress, Sekan Senblo, and we're both really excited about her. We've seen her on stage for years, and we cast her in a television project. So we're super, super excited to have the opportunity to work with her and cast her. Let's see, who else, Billy?
And I always say they're not a star if my mother doesn't know who they are. So,
Yeah.
and I'm just trying. That's a tricky question. It's hard.
It's hard. There's so many. That's honestly the true answer. There's so many actors that we love that just need that project to.
I mean, look at the cast of When They See Us, and not just the kids, but all the people that populate the police detectives and things. These are all working actors that nobody knows. I mean, that we know as casting directors and people in the industry know, but like a wide audience doesn't. And so it was great to be able to cast some of these people who I've known since they first started out. We came up together when they were doing stage work, to be exposed in something that got so much attention and a big audience.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, because you're never an overnight success, there are a lot of nights before that one overnight. So
That's true. Tying into that, are there any projects that you're currently working on that you're very excited about?
Yeah, I think we're working on the actress that Ashley mentioned, Sekan Senblo, is we just finished casting a pilot, which is a Black reboot of the Wonder Years, which was a show back in the early 90s, I think, Ashley, wasn't it? Which the young star of it was a young actor named Fred Savage, who is now actually directing the pilot. So it's exciting to see something from a whole another perspective, and it's great. That's one thing that's very exciting, and that's just about to start shooting in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the original Wonder Years is, I think, out on Hulu for anyone who's never seen it before.
Yeah.
To see it. So.
That's so cool. Oh, we have another question in the chat. Okay. When you work on a project that's not shooting in New York City and you'll be hiring local actors, how do you find those local actors? Do you partner with local casting associates? Do you have to go to that city to conduct the auditions, or how does that go?
In the way past, before Ashley was probably even born, oftentimes we were traveled to that location and did the casting. But now you primarily work with someone who's a local casting director, and there are a lot of wonderful ones who they don't just cover one city, but they cover more like a region. And then you watch. Hopefully your taste is in sync, and you find out pretty quickly, and then you can help guide that person. And we watch all those auditions as well, and make recommendations to the director. Mm-hmm. Along with, it's a collaboration between you and the local casting director.
Yep.
Cool. especially for like a film student like me, when I've casted my own projects, I usually just go on backstage or something like that. So it's really interesting to hear like how you guys would like outsource and like cast like that in different places that aren't New York City. So this is a little bit of a different question, but I want to know how you both go about casting Black characters, characters of color, and make sure to not like put people up for roles, like talking on projects, kind of like pigeonhole actors of color, especially like in Precious and Mudbound, that are stories that depict a lot of trauma.
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. So,
I was gonna say the same thing. I was like, I don't know if I follow. Sorry.
I mean, we do cast a lot of Black projects, whether it be in television or film, and I'm very proud of that fact. I mean, with Precious, for example, Gabby Sidibe, who was nominated for an Oscar and won several awards for her performance as Precious, she originally, we were told we could cast a girl of any age. So we were doing workshops all that summer with girls that were like 14 and 15 and 16. And then at the last minute, with 5 weeks before the movie was to start shooting, they said, no, we actually have to have someone who's 18 or older because that gives you more work hours. And so my associate at the time, she and I said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, colleges are all opening right. This is the first week of college. So we called all these drama departments of all the local New York schools. And we went and did casting sessions at all of them. And Gabby showed up at this one at Lehman, I think is how you say it, Lehman or Lehman College. And, she was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, it was, and that's back in the days when you had to put things on a DVD and everything. Now you do it all uploading it to a computer. But so, you just never know where you're going to get the talent from. And, but then of course, the downside of that was after Precious came out, everyone thought, oh, you're a genius at finding real people to do things. But that's not the case. It's like 1 in a million. So, and that's why when you're a casting director, your job sometimes it's over quickly, but a lot of times it goes on for a long time. So,
and I think to answer your question about not pigeonholing actors, it really is. We know and acknowledge that actors are, their abilities is wide ranging. So just because you see an actor doing one thing on screen doesn't necessarily mean that they can't do anything else. And we know and we understand that. So, sometimes it's exciting to approach an actor who maybe has been offered or been doing the same kind of roles to give them an opportunity to, spread their wings a little bit more. And we're very mindful of that and mindful of the fact that actors are capable of great range.
Cool. Yeah, you guys both answered that question. Sorry, it was a little confusing. Do you have a favorite director or a specific story where a risky casting decision ended up paying off in the end?
Well, we both, in terms of like favorite director, I mean, we worked a bunch of times with Lynn Ramsey. We most recently did oh gosh,
you were never really here.
Yeah, and I did. We Need to Talk About Kevin, and then there was a couple of other projects in between that actually never came to fruition. But Lynn and a lot of other directors we work with, it's a real collaboration, and that's really what you want, because you take their ideas and thoughts and turn them into a person, or and that's what you want. You want to hope you have a good creative collaboration with the director.
We're really
and I did many films for Oliver Stone, and the same thing there. And for example, in a movie called JFK, we cast Kevin Bacon as a hustler, and that was the first time he played anything other than like typical Kevin Bacon roles. So that was great. That was very exciting and we had John Candy, who's just since passed, but he was in a serious role where he'd been mostly been doing comedies. So it's wonderful when a director, and Oliver was always very collaborative and listens to your ideas and is willing to take a risk sometimes. That pays off.
Yeah, quite frankly, we've been very fortunate with the relationships that we have made with the directors that we work with.
I mean, there's so many I can name. I mean, Lee Daniels, we've done several films with Lee Daniels and television projects with Lee.
Exactly. Michael Almereyda, Philippe Falardeau.
Jane Campion, there's so many. I mean, and it's always exciting. And Dee Reese, who directed Mudbound. I mean, we've worked, I think, 3 times with Dee now. She's just marvelous. And she opens up to the actors in the audition process, which is so wonderful because she understands actors, which not all directors do.
One of my favorite things that Dee said once, we were in an audition session, we were auditioning for this role that, I mean, we were getting pitched from agents and managers, A-list names, A-list. And Dee said, no, I want to audition an actor. How do you give actors opportunity if you don't hire someone who auditions? And it's a beautiful thing for to work with someone who understands and sees actors that way. But we're very fortunate. I mean, we're fortunate to have worked with Ava. We're fortunate to have worked with all of the many different television directors that we've worked with and the showrunners, and fortunate to work with Fred Savage on the most recent Wonder Years. We're very fortunate.
Is the audience, Davi and Kira, is the audience made up of mostly young actors?
Watching the Q&A.
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of actors
and filmmakers.
Yeah.
Well, for the actors and for the other people that are in, did I just make everybody disappear? Sorry. For the actors in the audience, being an actor can be very frustrating because it's you being rejected, not just a piece of paper. And so you have to have patience and perseverance, and in any aspect of filmmaking, whether it be an actor, a casting director, a DP, you're not just going to get to the top immediately for most people. I mean, and so just stick with it. And as long as you love what you do, and I've been a casting director for over 25 years, for a long time. And I do love what I do, and I'm lucky that way. So, I'd rather be doing casting than working at McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with working at McDonald's, it pays the rent. So
I think for actors, you do not need to be any more than yourself. Just by being authentically you and coming into any audition scenario and sharing your work is the most that you can do. Casting directors, I think sometimes casting directors get this, there's this idea behind casting directors that we're gatekeepers of some sort, and we are not gatekeepers. We love actors. We are your advocates and your champions. We are your allies. We want you to do well every single time you come into our room for us. And so, that really means just being confident in yourself and just knowing that you're sharing your work, and that's the most that you can do.
I missed during this pandemic. I mean, we've been working the whole time, but it's all the auditions are happening over Zoom or self tapes, and I missed the personal interaction that you have as a casting director with the actors when they come into the room for you, whether you're just doing the audition yourself as a casting director or you're working in collaboration with the director and the producers. So there's, and I know that will come back hopefully sometime this fall, I hope, or maybe by the end of the year, who knows, but it will come back, and that'll be exciting when it does.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to capture someone's essence via Zoom and stuff like that. So yeah.
I mean, the Zoom process is almost in a way, in some ways it's easier because you can reach out to a bigger, wider field of people, but you don't get that personal interaction. You miss that.
Mhm.
And that's like really inspiring to hear what you said about Dee Reese, especially because like NYU alum, woo.
Oh, yes, it's true. She is an NYU alum.
Yeah.
And
And like,
she had a whole career before she became a director,
Mhm.
so not
yeah,
even in the film business. So
yeah. She's like very like well known amongst like me and my classmates. Like freshman year, we watched her short of Pariah, and then we watched
Yep.
the extended version. So that was really cool to see.
that must have been very interesting to do. So
Yeah, and to see how the casting, like some of the casting was the same and how it changed.
changed.
It's always really interesting to see how like shorts then adapt to features and how directors then decide to either go with bigger actors, like even in Shiva Baby, like how there were like smaller actors in the short and how like in the longer film, like they have Diana Agron. So
Yeah.
just you just see that.
Kate cast that.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, someone who we used to work with. So,
Cool,
and now
cool,
she's gone out on her own. So
Yeah.
cool.
We will tell her that you brought it up. That's very exciting.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited to see the full feature. I love the short and another NYU alum.
Yeah.
And Damien Chazelle he did a short of that. What was the movie that was that?
Right?
What? Yeah, Whiplash. He had a short
yeah.
of that, and then it went on to become a full-length feature, very successful.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
What aspects of casting do you think are sometimes overlooked by the general public?
Well, sometimes casting is overlooked, period.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, not to sound negative, but sometimes casting can be looked at as like a nebulous thing that unless you're actually doing it, it's really hard to quantify exactly what it is. And because we come on so early in the process, and then we're gone when really filming like usually begins, where we're not necessarily on the ground like in the production offices. So sometimes that you're kind of forgotten.
I mean, we still don't have an Oscar for casting, and there's Oscars for almost every other category.
Yeah.
And
Isn't
so
casting the only main title credit that doesn't have an Oscar, right, Billy?
I think
that
so.
true?
Yeah. So
It's
not
great
that one is in this to do it for awards, but if everyone else is going to get recognized, you want to be recognized too. So for the work you do, because casting is a huge contribution, an element, whether it's for any performing medium, whether it be theater, film, or television. So
if anybody's interested who's watching this about like why there's not, or the debate behind it, you can watch this great documentary that came out called Casting By. And that is also like it's an incredible history of casting directors.
Yeah.
Because it follows Marion Doherty and Lynn Stallmeister and how, these casting directors really started, because casting as a career has not been around as long as the film industry has been around. It used to be very, very different. And,
and back then the studio days, it was just the studio had said, okay, you're doing this movie, you're doing that movie. So
yeah.
Everyone should go check that documentary out. I definitely will after this conversation. It sounds really interesting. I've always wondered why it's not a category in the Oscars.
Well, hopefully it will be sometime soon.
I mean, Lynn Stallmaster, who just passed away a few weeks ago, he finally received the first honorary Oscar for casting. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. So
and there's that new Academy Museum that's opening in LA that has a casting exhibit, which is super exciting. Yeah. So then that means that anybody who's going to go to the Motion Picture Museum will actually see a part of the casting process. That's very exciting.
So
that is cool. That recognition. Ooh, what was the last movie that each of you last saw that you think had perfect casting?
Billy, what would you say?
Gosh, I'm trying to, oh gosh. Well, there are a few, I mean, the trial of the Chicago 7 is really well cast. And the actors are well utilized. I'm trying to think about what other films I've seen recently.
I'm trying to think of what you and I have, like,
Well, I'll say this, I know he's, not as popular as he once was, but Woody Allen's films have always been extremely well cast from before the time any of the three of you were born to now. So, controversies aside about the filmmaker, he always has wonderful casts in his films.
Ooh, we have another question from the audience. Okay. Someone asks, at what point do you need to search for an agent or manager if you want to work in LA coming from another city? How do you find that person? Is there a way to set yourself up on casting networks to be seen easier?
No, I don't feel like, sorry, Billy, what were you going to say?
This is the big catch-22 question. So go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, there's so many different things about the agent and manager conversation, because just because you have an agent and manager doesn't necessarily mean that you stop working for yourself. As an actor, you always have to be working for yourself, even if you have representation. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. I mean, whether you're coming to a new city or you're still building, you're working on building your credits, whatever it may be, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You can self-submit to casting directors when they're working on certain projects. Different casting offices have different ways they like to receive their submissions. I would say probably most is via email. And you can submit yourself and say like, hey, I'm available. And if you have special skills that pertain to that show, you want to highlight that. And then the casting office will receive it. That's one way. You can, potentially take workshops with people and put your work in front of them. Doing good work will bring people to you usually. And it also comes down to what Billy was saying before about perseverance and dedication. And, it's really, really, really difficult to start. It's very difficult, but if you have that determination and you follow your instincts about it,
be politely aggressive.
Yeah, politely aggressive. You'll find the right path.
Make it for young actors that don't have representation or are new in the industry. Make friends with the assistants in the office, because those assistants, like Ashley was, or interns even, always be polite to them, always be respectful of them. And because if you are, then they'll remember you and you'll be seen for a lot more things than if you're rude. Because trust me, I can name the actors that have been rude to someone that has worked for me, and I see them only under duress.
It's true, but it's also for a young actor, like if you think about someone like Dee Reese, who was making films while she was at NYU in her film program, doing a film with that filmmaker, as you're doing student films for people, no matter what city you live in, there are students who need actors for their student films.
Yeah.
Offer yourself up. In terms of platforms to put yourself out on as an actor, casting networks is one. Actors Access is another. That's a very good one. Backstage is another one. If you're a theater actor, Equity's website usually posts their auditions, that kind of thing. And you, like Billy said, you really want to also build a community, because if you hear of someone who's like, hey, I'm hearing that this office is working on something like this, and then you think, oh, I'm perfect for it, I'll self-submit. There you go.
We casted a show that Katori Hall created called P-Valley, and we're in the process of starting the second season. And we did an open call virtually, where some people had to email tapes and stuff, and we got over 11,000 submissions. And probably someone from the open call is going to get like a major role in this season. So, it's 1 of 11,000, but it's still better than 0 of 11,000. So,
Exactly.
and like when going back to Precious, because you mentioned that movie at the beginning, most of the people in that film, it was their first job. I on purpose looked for people that didn't have, because Lee Daniels really wanted, real people. And I mean, so a lot of them, it was their first acting job, and then they've gone on to have careers since.
It's so exciting to give someone their first job. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
No matter how big or small the role is, we celebrate with you when those things happen. It's very, very exciting for us.
Yeah, that's everything. Even just like the woman who starred in Roma, like that was her first like acting like breakout. And I know she's like working on newer projects right now too. And it's so cool to see like a new fresh face that you've never seen before, and them getting the recognition they deserve. So that's really awesome. So my last and final question to wrap all this up is, what advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers who are looking to cast actors for their films, their short films, or just for anyone who's interested in being a casting director?
Billy, do you want to go first?
Well, being a casting director, I'll address that one, and I'll let Ashley address the other part of the question. Write to casting offices, see if they need any help, be prepared to work for free in the beginning, and who knows, could turn, like Ashley did. Ashley's a prime example. She went from being an intern to an assistant to an associate to a partner, and last year we won an Emmy. So it's exciting what can happen, and you just have to be patient and love what you do, whatever aspect of filmmaking it is, whether it's being a casting director, an actor, a techie, anything. Ashley, do you want to answer the other?
Oh, advice for actors?
Yeah.
I think you just have to simply remember that you're enough. You're enough. Be kind, share your talent, and that's the most that you can do.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey guys, Davi and Kara, thank you guys so much. But Billy and Ashley, it was great. There's so many little nuggets that you guys were dropping advice as we were talking through this that just resonate with me so much. The fact that you're mentioning, first of all, to people to say, just because you get an agent or a manager doesn't mean that you stop working. We talk about this with even some even people who are more established. It's always, but especially when you're younger and in your careers, it's just, you're constantly doing work, constantly hustling, within the business. But and then Ashley, you said this a couple of times about, to actors, but also filmmakers, it's like, be yourself, you're enough. Francesca and I have gifted more times than I can count, the Rilke, letters to a young poet, which basically speaks to that. It's the same. It's we've given that to so many, especially filmmakers, but it's so true for actors too. Which is just kind of a meditation on, you have to stay true to yourself. So it's, I'm so appreciative of you guys and love these stories because it's. And by the way, I should point out, yeah, Frankie, what were you gonna say?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question because it's actually something that I come across, and I wanted to know, how do you guys deal with difficult agents when they don't want to bring something to an actor, and perhaps you don't have like a cash offer and you really believe in something and they're like, no, and how do you deal with that?
Well, there's a couple of ways. I mean, a lot of times someone may know somebody and they'll take that script to that talent directly. But Ashley and I still always go through the agent, because if you don't, it just can become a nightmare. And if you have an agent who's being difficult, I think we've been in the business long enough and have a respectful relationship with the agents and managers, even the difficult ones, some of whom I actually like best. They're in the end protecting their client. And you just say, okay, if you don't want to get it to the client, would you just at least read it yourself? Which they usually will do, because that's part of their job. And then if they have an opinion that differs from yours, you say, well, here's why it really should be given to your client. And because technically they're supposed to give any offer to the client to read, but sometimes when people are working on something, it's very hard for them to have the time to read it in the when they're shooting a series that shoots, there's a new episode every 8 days, or if they're shooting a film and they're in every scene, it can be hard.
That goes back to what we were talking about earlier about taking on projects that we're passionate about. Because if we're not passionate about this script, we can't have those conversations with that agent.
And we can't advocate for it if we're not passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you read a script and you know that you're not the right casting director for it, and we try to recommend other good people, like Kate Geller, who cast that Sugar Baby or whatever it was called.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whatever. What's it called?
Shiva Baby.
Oh, Shiva Baby. I said Sugar Baby.
It's funny because, Francesca and I are so passionate about supporting filmmakers in their early stages. And it's you balance it. There's so many opportunities. There's so many things, fortunately, and certainly I know this to be true for you guys. So you're right. It's like time is your main currency, right? So you have to choose like what it is that you're doing and be sure that you're aligned with what you're.
No, there's nothing worse. Don't do a job just for the money. You still have to be passionate about it. I mean, the money is nice, don't get me wrong, but so.
Exactly.
Well, I did want to point out too, we were talking about the Oscars, and I couldn't agree more that like casting is so critical. The Spirit Awards do have the Robert Altman Award.
Yeah, which we got from Mudbound, actually. So
right, I remember that. That's right.
So,
which goes to the ensemble cast and the casting director. Our film.
And by the way, Steven Spielberg once gave us 2 pieces of advice. 1, wear comfortable shoes. 2, 80% of great directing is casting.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that.
And I agree with it too, 100%. And that's why I think that you guys should get an Oscar.
Yeah.
So, thanks,
It should
Francesca.
definitely be a category. I mean,
It really should be. I mean,
it should.
there's no reason why it shouldn't be. I mean, up until this year, sound had two Oscars. Now they've condensed it to 1 award, but it was like sound can have 2 and we can't even have 1.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
You need to get that trending.
Yes. Where's the dog that was in the background?
Oreo, where'd he go? Come here. Come here. He's now eating. This is
Oh,
well.
so cute.
He's
So cute.
He's so cute.
well, thank you guys again. It's really fun. I can't wait till we can actually hang out in New York together over a coffee or a drink and catch
Well,
up.
yes, if you're here in the fall, we must. So, and
Yes,
sure.
definitely.
I pray the 24-hour plays get on. So,
Yes.
We'll definitely keep you posted.
And
Great.
and also that we'll get to shoot something at some point.
yes, absolutely. So,
Exactly.
good.
Mhm.
All right.
well,
you guys-
All right.
Well, thank you. It was a
Thanks so
pleasure, and I
much.
hope it was informative.
You
So,
guys were amazing. Thank you, Ashley, so much.
Great,
Okay.
great
Julie.
job, Davi.
Thank you.
all right.
Guys,
Bye, Davi. Bye,
Take care.
Kira. Thank you.
nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.